Right, good evening, members, and welcome to the our last full meeting of this council. Could we have apologies for absence, please?
Yes, Chair. Received apologies from councillors Campbell, Henderson, Hunt, Topham, Saxby, Derek Spear, Liz Spear, York, Lane, Chesters, Phillips and Mack. And Councillor Nell will be arriving late this evening, Chair.
And Pratt, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda. Please could I seek a mover for a seconder for the minutes of the full meeting held on the 22nd of February. Can I move a seconder? Yeah. All those in favour? Any against? Thank you.
I abstain from that.
Same here.
One abstention. Yeah, thank you. Right, item 3, chair's announcements. I'd like to ask Bev if she'll just read out a letter which we've had from the chairman, Councillor Hunt, who unfortunately can't be with us tonight.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Hunt says, first of all, my apologies for not being here tonight, which will be the last full council for those not standing in May, though I will be here in May for the handover and in a seat, hopefully. I thought it appropriate, as Joe never assumed the position of chair, that he went out chair at the last full council, as he has been an excellent vice chair these past 2 years, supporting me in my role and covering on engagements where I have been unable to. To everyone, I want to say a massive thank you for the support I've received in my role as chair, which is not easy, and I also thank the officers for their constant guidance as well. To my chaplain, who I will see for the last time as chair in May, a massive thank you for your prayers and support. You're a legend. Just to end, I have been a councillor for 18 years, and I can't honestly say I don't think I've had a falling out with any councillors, past or present. So a massive thank you to all councillors for always being supportive and giving good advice where needed. It has been appreciated. To those not standing again, and I know some of you have clocked up many years, I wish you well in your retirement from the council. The rest of you, I will see you all in May, God willing. All the best, Councillor Julie Hunt, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I'd just like to endorse those remarks and just to say that I wish everyone the best in the existing councillors and new members or new members of the parliament who are standing. I wish them all the very best in the forthcoming elections that are coming up. And for those who are retiring, and there's a few of us, best wishes and good health for all the future years to come. But it's been certainly a privilege for me over the last 20 years to have been part of this council, and something I don't regret doing at all. I should also just like to thank from the chair and myself, the chief executive and the officers of North Devon District Council. The last 4 years has been very demanding and very challenging for everybody, members as well as officers. But you know, some of the work that the officers have had to do as regards grants, etc. And I won't pick out any names, but I think it's pretty obvious who I'm referring to. But I think it's been a credit to this council on the extra work we had to do and took on. So thank you, Chief Executive and all members of staff.
Yeah.
Item 4, business brought forward with consent of the chair. I'm going to call on the Chief Executive because he would like to say something in this spot.
Thank you, Chair. And members, if I can refer you to one of the additional documents that came out to you earlier today. It's on your iPads, it's under item 4. And this is a consultation response that I'm proposing goes to Devon County Council. Devon County Council have got a consultation out at the moment regarding the cessation of arrangements to support hostels and some floating support as well, which goes towards the 18+ homelessness prevention scheme across the whole of the county. For North Devon in particular, it would mean that the support that's provided to the Maples Hostel in Barnstaple, which has got 9 beds, would be withdrawn. And that service provides quite an essential element to our homelessness prevention service as a whole. In short, people that are sleeping rough on the streets in Barnstaple tend to use Maples, or we tend to use Maples as a sort of halfway house, if you like, between taking them off the streets and getting them into permanent accommodation. And so the loss of that accommodation would be quite strongly felt, I think, in our service. And so what's been tabled today, and I appreciate you can't take a decision on this tonight because it's under item 4, and it wasn't on the agenda in time, but what's been tabled for you tonight is a draft response that will go back to the consultation. The date of the consultation runs until the 19th of April, and what I'd suggest is members have a look at that and then feedback any comments to me in the next week or so, and then we'll make sure that those comments get put into the consultation response and sent back on time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Warden.
Thank you, Chief Executive, for actually bringing this to our attention. I'm obviously very concerned about this. I know Councillor Topham couldn't come tonight, but I know she would be very concerned about this as well, because it will impact our services, which at the moment are getting, unwieldy in the number of people that are coming forward as potentially homeless. And this is something that will come back on us if this is actually closed. And it's not just Maples, is it? There's another one as well, which has 4 beds. So I'm extremely concerned about this. So I very much welcome our response to go back to the county because we need to actually get them to understand that this is a service that really needs to continue. It's the vulnerable people that will be suffering as a result of this. And this council will have to try and pick up the pieces. And we can't always do that. We just haven't got the staff, we haven't got the resources. So thank you, Chief Executive, for bringing this forward to us tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Very, very concerned about this, and thank you to the Chief Executive for bringing it forward, particularly as well as losing the beds that Whitman has provides, losing the drug and alcohol specialists in North Devon, especially at the moment, considering some of the issues that have been going on and been reported about quite extensively in the papers, would be disastrous for this area. And I fully support North Devon putting in a response.
Thank you, councillor Walker. Has anyone else got any views? Councillor Beederman.
Yeah, very quickly, Chair. I mean, obviously, it'd be quite useful, I suggest, that the county councillors declare an interest, but if we could get some sort of briefing potentially together. So I think you almost do a piece of work on what the fallout and the impact could well be, because I suspect, like a lot of these things, it seems like a saving to the county council, but the reality is fallout is likely to spread across many agencies. So I just wondered if there was, and I'm still looking at my other county council members, so we could be brief, because obviously hopefully we can make representation at the appropriate time. But thank you.
Councillor Pearce. Councillor Yabsley. Councillor Room.
I just recommend that everybody actually signs up and responds to the consultation. Right, I mean, the more of us who shout and say no, the better, I think. So we just need that loud voice, and it's not just, I think it's fantastic that it's been brought forward. I think we should do it as a council. But actually, all of us, really, it's very, very important that we don't need any more services. They just keep taking them away. So we can't let this one go like that.
Thank you, councillor Pearce. Councillor Yabsley.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to declare personal interest as a county councillor. I'm afraid I'm not aware of this.
Okay.
And Andrea's left the room because she's on the executive.
Oh, right.
I don't think I need to do it.
Councillor Room.
I declare an interest as well as Frank and
and that's what they're saying.
Right.
But I will say one thing, what it is doing is gonna put pressure on other services, so it's short-sighted. And the other, and it seems as though Devon County have got the agenda of, they brought this out, same as the link centres, just after the budget has been confirmed. And I do have an understanding that they weren't going to make these consultations happen until the budget was confirmed. And therefore, I think at the moment, it's vital that we do reply, because these are what it's our communities that are going to be effective. You know, it's not all about finances, it's about the moral duty that we have as public servants to make sure that the most vulnerable in our society are protected. And I think that the response from this council is really, really important.
Thank you, councillor Room. Councillor Lever and then councillor Lovren, please. Sorry, councillor Lovren, I couldn't see you behind there.
Thank you. I just wanted to declare a personal interest in the energy.
Thank you.
Also as a trustee of Encompass Southwest, which is one of the largest, the largest services charity.
Thank you. Councillor Lovren?
I want to say, talk about overstretched services, if they shut these places down and these people get ill, there is one other place, the North Devon District Hospital, that has no beds, that has no doctors, that has a lack of nurses. They realise that by shutting these centres, those beds will be redirected to the hospital, and the hospital has not got the facility to take on the overspill that's shutting down homeless places. It's common knowledge that if somebody's speaking on the street, they're going to get ill, they're going to.
Thank you very much. I think everybody is in agreement that this letter is sent, so we note this. We can't vote on it, but we note it, and it will be sent to Devon County Council. Thank you very much. Right, well, I think there's a councillor gone on the side. Oh, here she comes. Item 5, replies to questions submitted by the public. We have none. Item 6, consider notice of motions. We have none. Item 7, any other declarations of interest other than the ones we've had?
I have no further declarations, Chair.
Thank you.
I think the item to do with the community land trusts, do I have to declare again? I declare the SMR. I can't remember which one it is. It's fine.
Okay,
Okay,
15%.
yeah, that's one.
right. Item 8, Chair's replies to any questions to the council by members, none received. And to agree the agenda between part A and B was no B, so we haven't got to go worry about that. Excuse me, I'll put my back to you. It is my pleasure tonight to welcome to the council representatives from Southwest Water. We have Vicky Garner and Alan Farrell. So I think it's a PowerPoint presentation. Vicky and Alan will speak for about a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, and then we'll have questions. Please keep them as short as possible. Vicky's got to travel all the way back to Falmouth tonight, so we don't want to be here until too late, so I'll leave it up to you. So over to you, whoever would like to start.
Yeah, where would you like me to stand? Shall I stand here or over there?
I think it's
Over
better,
there, the people around the corner can hear me, is that
I
right?
think it's better if you go in the middle,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
Is that right there?
Right in the middle?
Yes, absolutely fine.
Brilliant, thank you. So, apologies if I cough, I've not got COVID, I've had a cough for about 3 or 4 weeks, so hopefully, it won't put me off. Can everybody see that? Okay, am I in the way? All right? Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so first of all, thanks for inviting me. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. My name's Alan Burrows. I joined Southwest Water just over 2 years ago. Before that, I was at the Environment Agency for 31 years. And my previous roles in the Environment Agency related to environmental enforcement, both on water quality, waste. In fact, I probably was, one would say, on the other side, sometimes taking Southwest Water to court on some potential pollution incidents. So I've been working for the environmental regulator,
but I made a life choice to move to South West Water to make a difference, not only to my own career, but also to see if I can make a difference to the environment which we live in. So hopefully that gives you some reassurance around my values and some of my background as well. So I'm proposing to go through this presentation today, and what I wanted to do was to just go through some of the points of interest that I think members here wanted me to discuss in a little bit more detail. So I will do that, and then perhaps if there's any points of clarity at the end, that's okay. Chair, we'll do that.
Yeah, fine.
Okay. So first of all, CSOs, storm overflows, pollution overflows. They have many names. I think what's really important, I think, to note is that there is a reason for storm overflows. The primary purpose is to ensure that if after heavy rain, those systems get overloaded, there's an ability for that system to remove the risk of that storm overflow or that sewage impacting properties or land flooding or businesses, etc. So that's one of the reasons why they're put in place. After heavy rain, and people will see this through the beach live alerts that we put out through our system, particularly around North Devon beaches. After heavy rain, some of our storm overflows will operate. The question is whether or not they operate too frequently or they have an impact on the environment. And I think everybody in this room will have a view. I have a view. I would have had a view as a personal view, and I will have a view as a previous environmental regulator. But I just wanted to set out the purpose of those storm overflows. So during dry weather, they should not be operating. During wet weather, they will operate, but they will operate depending on the type of rainfall, i.e. is it really intense rainfall, or is it rainfall that's happened over a prolonged period of time? Just going to talk a little bit about WaterFit very briefly. We will be launching something called WaterFit next week, and within that will be an explanation of how storm overflows operates, because I think some people don't fully appreciate why we have them, when they operate, under what circumstances they operate, and what potential impact they may or may not have on the environment. So first of all, there's been a lot in the press at the moment around storm overflows. If I was honest with myself, and I will be with you, probably 2 or 3 years ago, it would be fair to say that there probably wasn't the focus on storm overflows as there is now. I think that things have happened through the pandemic, which we've all been through. People are more connected with the environment, particularly where people didn't have to travel abroad, probably seeing more things than they've ever seen before because they've been in and about in their own community, and people have started to take more and more of an interest, not only in their own community and how it operates, but also the environment within that community as well. So that's one of the reasons why that interest in storm overflows has happened. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about our approach to storm overflows and what the government are saying. So over the past 18 months to 12 months, the government have set out some requirements for the water companies to, let's say, do something about storm overflows, and that falls into kind of 3 main categories. First of all, do you know where they are? Simple question, but we may not know, some water companies may not know where all of their storm overflows are, because it's not about a pipe that comes into the environment. In some cases, these storm overflows discharge into a culvert under houses. Sometimes because of the historic mapping, some water companies may not know where they are. So the first thing is know your storm overflows and know where they are. That's the first thing. The next thing is, how do we know what they're doing? And that's why the government have requested all water companies to have monitoring on all of those storm overflows by a certain period in time. We've achieved that for all of our storm overflows. So now we've got monitors in place for all of those storm overflows. So we're now monitoring them, and therefore we now know what whether or not they're operating or not. The next thing is give us some assurance that your monitoring is working, and tell us what you're finding out. So the environmental regulator, the Environment Agency, who I used to work for, I put a requirement on all water companies to provide that information to them as part of an annual review process. So for all of those storm overflows that we have, with all of those monitoring devices in place, we have to make a return to the Environment Agency every year. That is an annual return based on January to December, and we have to make that return by the end of February. We've done that. Currently in the process of having a conversation with the Environment Agency over whether or not they've understood our return, whether or not they've got any questions, and eventually that data will be published on our website. So that annual return information that we provide to the Environment Agency is available for others to look at. So we know where they are, we know we're monitoring them, and we know what our monitoring is saying. What we're going to do about it is the next thing. So there have been a number of, onto my slides here, sorry. There have been a number of requests from the government on water companies to hit certain targets. We've translated that into something that we've called WaterFit. And what WaterFit is saying that we as South West Water will reduce the number of times those storm overflows operate on average over a period of time and over certain years. So we've made a commitment to do that. And I'm going to, just checking I've got my facts right. So we're going to reduce the average number of spills per location to 20 spills per year by 2025. You're probably thinking, well, why 20 and why not 10? Why 20 and why not 50? I've looked at your data and there's one site that's spilling 100 times a year. What I really need to impress on everybody in the room is a spill doesn't necessarily mean an impact. You can have a pipe as round as this glass here that is in effect measuring a spill in the monitor, but it's only dribbling out, I don't know, a litre every hour, but it's a spill. And that spill could be going into an environment like the River Torridge, which is diluted by 1,000, 10,000 times. So that's not likely to have an impact. Equally, there may be a pipe so big that's going into a river that small. So there's something about understanding not only the number of spills and the duration of spills, but what impact those spills are having on the environment. And one of the things that the Environment Agency is currently discussing with DEFRA, and the DEFRA ministers and the Secretary of State, is whether or not water companies should be monitoring upstream and downstream of storm overflows. Because in that way, you can make some assessment of whether or not there is an impact on the environment. And as a water company and as an environmental regulator, as well as Ofwat, we do need to make sure that any decisions that we make are evidence-led, because ultimately it's your money as a customer that's paying for any improvements. So if we're going to do something, we need to make sure that that improvement is going to lead to an environmental gain. Hopefully, is everybody still with me? Yeah, I'm seeing nods. So one of the other things we're doing is talking about open data. So at the moment you think, well, Alan, I can't see any of that anywhere. All I can see is what you provide to the Environment Agency. How do I know you're not covering things up? I've heard about the water companies. I heard that Southern Water got fined £90 million for not providing the data that they should have provided and hiding things. And I think all water companies have learned from the Southern Water experience, I'll be honest. I think it was a bit of a shock for a number of people in the water industry. So the Environment Agency are going to be requesting through the Environment Act that we make our storm overflow information available in near real time. Not real time, i.e. it's happening now and it's finished now. There's a time for the information to get from the monitor that might be 100 kilometres away, 70 miles in imperial metrics from our from the river to our offices in Peninsula House. That then needs to be looked at to make sure it's real, and therefore then the information will go out. But ultimately, we'll be trying to ensure that that information is in real time, so that members of the public can begin to make informed choices about whether or not they go somewhere or they don't go somewhere. Okay, so there is a requirement under the Environment Act by a point in the future, and I think it's 2025. Thank you, just checking with Vicky, March 2025, that we make information available in near real time. So just to recap, whoops, are you okay there?
Yeah.
So we know where they are, we're monitoring them, we're providing the information to the environmental regulator, and we're beginning to make that information available to the wider members of the public and other organisations. They may be campaign organisations, and nothing to be hidden here, so they can start making informed choices about what they do, and maybe interrogate the data in the way that we possibly haven't interrogated. Sometimes, or it may feel a little bit uncomfortable to make information available that's ours to others. It may be really helpful for us in the longer term to actually see patterns that we're currently not seeing. So there are some real advantages in this as well. I keep pressing that one, but it's this one. Apologies. So one of the things we are launching next week is the plan at the moment is making information available on whether or not there are spills that are impacting bathing beaches around the southwest. So for North Devon, I was in a meeting, sorry, I keep seeing the light there. I was in a meeting with Selene Saxby in North Devon in Georgian a couple of weeks ago, talking about bathing beaches and water quality in North Devon. You've got some fantastic beaches. I'm a View boy. I'm very jealous because some of the beaches up in North Devon are really good and the water quality is really good. And what we need to make sure is that we maintain that water quality, but we also give members of the public informed choices about whether or not they decide to go to one place or the other based on that information from storm overflows.
Careful what you say about View, because the chief executive's come from there.
Hello. I have to declare an interest. We've met before, haven't we? So I didn't recognise you from.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, okay. It's thrown me now. I should try and get back on track.
No,
So we are going to be providing information on our WaterFit pages around what information is out there to allow people to make more informed choices. So that's about storm overflows. I'm not standing here pretending that I know what all the problems are. I'm not standing here pretending to know that there aren't any problems out there that need resolving. I'm not pretending to understand that I know what the solutions are to everything. But we are looking at it, and there is a plan that we need to put in place that will be driven by DEFRA in terms of the timescales for us to describe what that plan is over a period of time. Now, I'd love to be able to stand here and say, I know what the plan is for every 1,600 storm overflows in the southwest region, but I can't remember 1,600 things in one go. But that information will be progressively provided to give people the opportunity to look at that. And we're going to have a conversation around your beach, your say, Vicky, around what people believe they feel are the most important things to them around their primarily around their beach locations at this point in time, because that tends to be the biggest environmental driver. If you're somebody that's lived in Southwest for a long time, you can go to the middle of Devon and Cornwall, and there's nobody there because everybody's on the coast. That's what happens in the summer. So that's where those environmental drivers and the priorities are coming from at this point in time. One of the other questions that people had, we'll come back to storm overflows and CSOs in a minute if people have got any questions, if that's okay, Chair. One of the other questions that came about is what we're doing about flooding from sewers, and what we're going to do about it now and in the longer term. So there is a requirement on all water companies from DEFRA to produce something called drainage and wastewater management plans. And I'll let you read that, but I'll summarise it. Basically, the main objectives are to manage flood risk, to maintain compliance with the way in which our networks operate. In other words, to ensure that our storm overflows and our networks operate in the way that they're permitted now, in the near future and in the longer term, but also to improve the way in which those storm overflows do operate. So if you remember just now, I said one of our targets under WaterFit is to reduce the average number of spills down to 20 spills by 2025. There are other targets that we will be committing to beyond 2025, but the first one is average of 20 spills by 2025. All right, one again. So there are hundreds of assets. This is particularly complex, just to explain that we got a lot of assets in North Devon. In total, in terms of the kilometres of sewage network that we've got in the southwest, it's in the region of 20,000 kilometres. Most of that is underground. Therefore, a lot of it is very difficult to get to. But that's not to say we won't be doing anything to improve those assets over time. Some of the other things I just wanted to mention in terms of pollutions from those assets in North Devon, in the constituency of North Devon, 2 years ago, there were 9 pollutions that were attributed to our assets in North Devon. In 2022, there was 1. I can hear people thinking, but isn't a storm overflow a pollution, Alan? Not necessarily, because if you've got a storm overflow that's coming out of a pipe so big into a river, 1,000 times wider, the impact isn't going to be of a pollution, but it is still a spill. So there's some interpretation there to be had around that. So there is investment happening in North Devon. We are investing in Combe Martin. We've already done some work within Combe Martin, and one of the successes from that was over previous years, Combe Martin was always hitting poor for bathing water quality. And it was a real pain to get it from poor even to satisfactory. Last year, it went from satisfactory to good. And that's not all about South West Water doing something. That's also about land management. It's also about misconnections. It's also about managing the network. It's also about educating the local community around. Everybody's had their dinner now. Around the 3 Ps, pee, poo and paper, the only things that should be going down the loo. Not wet wipes, because once they've gone down the loo and once they get into the environment, it becomes it's impossible to manage. So there are some other investments here. What I'll do, Joe, is we'll make sure that those investments are clear. We'll provide some information afterwards so you can see where exactly those investments are in North Devon.
You'll provide the.
Yeah. We'll provide some information behind this slide.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. The final question was around drinking water pressure. I'm not a drinking water specialist. But what I can say is around drinking water pressure, we do manage pressure in our network to help us manage leaks from our network. If you have high pressure network, you're more likely to have higher leaks. If you have a lower pressure network, you're more likely to have less leaks. New developments in their own right, I think this is one of the questions, will not necessarily lead to reduced pressure. We have pumps within our system that do pump the water around. A lot of it is gravity, but we do have surface water reservoirs that do pump the water around. And pressure will also depend on where you are. If you're at the top of a hill, you're more likely to have lower pressure than you are at the bottom of the hill. Simple physics, somebody tells me. The lower you are, you know, the greater the height difference, the more likely there is to be pressure difference. But we do recognise there are some pressure issues within North Devon. The primary reason why those happen is to manage the pressure in the network to keep the leaks down. Anything at the high pressure is likely to lead to something potentially just exploding. And what we don't want is that, because we don't want people to run out of water either. Oh, sorry, I keep pressing that in there. Supply and South West Water supply area. One of the other questions I think was what you're doing around water supply and what you're doing around drought. I've been an environmentalist for more than 33 years. Last year is the worst I've ever known it, and I joined the Environment Agency in 1989, and I thought that was the worst thing since 1976. Last year was incredibly dry. This February has been incredibly dry. If you've been watching the weather forecast, it's been the driest February in the last 30 years. That on back of a dry summer does mean there will be potential pressures on water supply for this year. Last year, the majority of those pressures were in Cornwall, because the majority of the water for Cornwall comes from Colliford. That is the strategic reservoir for Cornwall. More fortunate here in Devon, because we got two strategic reservoirs. We got Rodeford, which I think is in Devon. It's not, of course, on this side of the Tamar, isn't it? That's right. And we got Wimbleball. Wimbleball in itself is a great reservoir because it actually fills up quite quickly. It's not as big as others, but it's a really good source. Plus, we got rivers like the River Exe, where we can abstract from the River Exe as well under high flows. So what we do is we move water around the place to make sure that we can manage demand. So we can supply, but equally we need to make sure that we keep on reminding people that water is not an infinite resource. Climate change and population growth and the change in the way in which people value water is constantly moving. The average use of water by an individual person over time has got more and more. People expect water to come out of a tap all the time. They probably use water more and differently than they would have done 20, 30 years ago. I remember when I was a kid, we had one bath a week and I shared it with my two brothers. You can have a shower 2 or 3 times a day now. So human activity is also putting pressure on the way that the demand is there as well. So there is an element of it's not an infinite resource, and we do need to think about the ways that we change our behaviour as well. What else am I going to say on this? So one of the things we also will need to consider if supply and demand doesn't change throughout the summer and the rainfall isn't expected as we would like to expect, is we will need to consider temporary use bans as we currently have in Cornwall. Research from CCW, Consumer Council for Water, suggests that actually the majority of customers can understand why there are temporary use bans in place. So we need to strike the balance between making sure we manage that demand drive, but also if and when we have to put temporary use bans in place. This one again. So that's the kind of short term. In the longer term, we have something called water resource management plans. I used to work in the Environment Agency and lead a team of water resource planning specialists, and right thing to South West Water saying, I don't think this is good enough because you haven't considered this, you haven't considered that. I'm now on the other side. I'm not in the water resources team, but I do understand a little bit about this. But ultimately, water resources management plans look at the long term, look at the 25-year horizon, because for those of you who are as old as me, remember when there wasn't Rodeford there. Rodeford actually took a long time to develop. It took a lot of consultation. It took a lot of environmental impact assessment to be done before it even got to the point where the dam could be built. And even when the dam was built, it then took a long time for Rodeford to fill up. So that's why we have to look in the long term as well as the short-term supply demand. We also need to look in the long term in terms of our water resources as well. They're reviewed every 5 years by the Environment Agency. They'll say, knowing what we know now compared to what you knew about 5 years ago, is there any tweaks that you need to make in your long-term plan? So one of the things we're looking at in our water resources plan now is how can we have more reliable resources of water and not necessarily have to rely on rainfall all the time. So there'll be things that will be coming in around desalination in certain parts of the region. We need to find a way of ensuring that any of that desalination is as carbon neutral as possible, because it is a high energy use, but equally water is for life. You know, we do need to strike that balance as well. I think I've said enough about water resources, management plans. Again, the slides are available. I'm sure people have got some questions, Chair. And then I think the only other thing I suppose I just wanted to say around water resources is that everybody has their part to play. I'm always shouting up to my kids to turn the shower off. I've got little gadgets in my house, which is a 4-minute shower. I've got energy saving devices on my tap so that not so much water comes out. I do read my water meter every week on a Saturday evening before I go to bed to check I've got no leaks in my house, because if I have, it costs me money and it costs me energy. But if everybody did that, I'm sure there'd be certain things we could do to reduce demand. So thank you for listening. Hopefully I explained that in a way that's helpful for everybody, and I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Alan. 4 minutes for a shower seems a bit over the top, really.
Yeah, that's what my son used to do. A navy shower, you turn the water on, scrub down, and then turn the water on again.
Right, thank you very much for
Was that
that
right?
presentation. There's a few hands going up. Councillor Bertinus was the first one to go up.
So I got my glasses on.
Right.
Thanks, Chairman. And thank you for coming tonight, Alan, speaking about storm flows.
Right.
As I understand what you said towards the beginning, you described the increased public concern over the last couple of years as being related to people noticing things they hadn't previously noted, somehow related to COVID. However, I'm afraid I just don't believe that. And it seemed to me that your presentation was mainly a confection of excuses and distractions. I'm pretty sure that everyone in this room knows that the only reason you're standing here in front of us, and in many other gatherings like this and in communities around the southwest, is because water cleanliness is so massively worse today than it was 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm not just talking about South West Water, I'm talking about water companies nationally. By the way, constantly referring to yourself as an environmentalist, I don't think it's very convincing and helps, because it just kind of helps to undermine the rest of your arguments.
Okay, so if I can respond to that.
Please.
So in this isn't my evidence, this is the Environment Agency's evidence. 1% of the reasons for not achieving good ecological status, i.e. for poor river quality, is down to storm overflows. 1% across rivers in England. The majority of the reasons for not achieving good status, i.e. the status of which we would all like our rivers to be, is primarily agriculture. Now, it's not something I want to say it's not my fault, but I think it's really important to put some perspective on this. Yes, 17% of the issues for not achieving, 17% of the 70% of the reason for our waters not achieving good quality is down to our sewage treatment works, but not down to storm overflows. And that's not my data. That's the Environment Agency's data.
But we were talking about sewage in rivers, aren't we, beaches?
Yeah, and there will, and as a result of that, the Environment Agency have a Water Industry National Environment Programme, which looks at what we need to do as a water company to ensure that our activities do not impact on the water environment. And that's not something that happens overnight. It will not happen today, it will not happen tomorrow. It's a progressive improvement, because if that doesn't happen, everybody's water bills will just be excessive. And within a cost of living crisis, we do need to balance that out.
Thank you, Alan. I'll take these down as I saw them and then, when I've finished these, I'll ask for some more hands. Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Gubb, Councillor Davis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I was actually at the presentation that you gave.
I know, but Georgia, good to see you again. George Ham, sorry.
To say it right, I will be right back. Unfortunately, my question was allowed to be asked at the very end of the meeting.
I know, it was a late
At the
question.
beginning, and you didn't have time to respond to me. Since then, you have managed, or your authority has managed to send me quite a detailed response to my question. It linked to one of the points was made by Clarissa, I can't remember her name.
Clarissa Newell from the Environment Agency.
Thank you, from the
yeah.
Environmental Agency. And she said that there's an ever increasing households wanting to go into the sewage system. Now, the point I was making was that we as an authority are deemed to put reasoned responses at planning level as our parish councils to large development, well, not just large developments, any developments within our parishes. And unless we know capacity levels, we have little chance of making a reasoned response. In my own village of Woolacombe, which is obviously around the corner from Georgia, the development on the 50-year-old water system has intensified tremendously in the last decade, 20 years, with development of caravan sites, camping sites, hotels, whatever. So, yeah, I have a concern there, and the point I made again was that you mentioned here overflows quite often. If you've got an overflow, in my naivety, an overflow means that the system isn't working. So how can we then put more things? And in the response that came back, two pieces there were that I picked out with it to me that were regularly South Water meet with the local planning authorities. And also, when we receive inquiries from a developer, we carry out an evaluation. Should this information from that not be then relayed to the parishes and to the district councils to make a reasoned response?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a planning specialist. What I do know is that we're not currently a statutory consultee in the planning process, but we do look at those planning applications that come through. We're not a statutory consultee in so much as the Environment Agency is or Natural England is.
Sorry, Alan, I stand to be corrected, but we have the chairman of the planning committee here. I understood that South West Water were.
We are consulted, but we're not a statutory consultee. There's a slight difference. So I think.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah. But we do take into consideration. So what we do, we have a formula that looks at the number of houses that are proposed. And based on that formula, we work out what would be the average number of people in that house and therefore how much flow would be expected to be received from that house. We then look at what our flow information says is currently at certain sewage treatment works. And if we believe that that flow is not acceptable, we will either come back and say, I'm sorry, but we don't think our network's up to the required capacity, or we will need to put in place some extra capacity within that network to improve it. But I think it's fair to say 100 houses in itself doesn't necessarily mean 100,000 extra litres of water instantaneously every time. So there is a calculation that we go through, and I think what I'll do is, Vicky, I'll take away that. And what I'll do is I'll try and give you a little bit more explanation as to how do we do those calculations to give you a little bit more insight to that. Would that be helpful?
That would be very.
Because I can't explain it now because I'm not. Yeah.
I'm certainly not shooting the messenger here.
No.
I
That's
think
fine.
it ought to be, in that case, the South West Water and all the water authorities ought to be pushing to be a statutory consultant.
We are. We are. And that will give us that will give us the ability to say until our systems are at the right capacity to accept this, you have no right to connect. currently there is this right in it. And therefore, it is a bit of a catch-22, but we are pushing for that through Water UK, our national body.
Right, members, I don't want to cut anybody short, but if you want to be here until 9 or 10 o'clock tonight, but councillor Gubb,
I'll
councillor
be very
Davies,
quick, because we got to mention Kew Martin.
good old Carmarthen.
Yeah, well, can I just say, I've been on this, yeah, we've been on this journey with you for many, many years, and we've had a lot of investment, a hell of a lot of investment. Attenuation tank, we've had cameras down sewers to see if there's leakages, we've had roof runoff surveys, we've done all sorts. We're there now, and my suggestion is if you're going to do this, do it with a group. We had a fantastic chairman, Trevor Kibble, who could read what the environment agencies were saying, the figures and everything. They are a bit daunting, some of the figures, but it's just working with you. We have Paul McNee from.
Yes, it works for me.
Yeah, Paul, he was fantastic. We did the 3 Ps. The children at the school got involved. They did that. We dished it out all over Kew Martin to the caravan sites everywhere. And it's working at the moment. And I think we're nearly there, aren't we? I think Barbara Martin's now, she's now sort of doing a bit of work on the side. But we also, I think Andrea might say what we did on Monday night. We had another meeting with some youngsters, didn't we, the biosphere, and what they're doing within the river. But I'd like to just say thank you for all the work that you've done in Kew.
Thank you for that, councillor Gubb, thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say, it's a long journey though, it wasn't.
A very long journey. I mean, I've been there for a long time and it's been a long journey, but we're there in the end, but it was worth it.
Thank you. Councillor Davis? Ladies first.
Just briefly, I understand that you're currently consulting about your 5-year business plan. And I was slightly alarmed at the end where you talked about building a desalination plant. We are the wettest part of the United Kingdom, and I would like to be reassured, and I'm sure all the people that do pay South West Water would like to be reassured that before anything quite so the nuclear option gets adopted, that every leak has been repaired across the whole region.
Yeah.
And that is, I'm just a bit alarmed that we're going straight to desalination, which is hugely energy hungry, without the people who are bill payers, and I'm probably the only one in the room that isn't, so I'm supporting you all because you all have South West Water bills, that they can be reassured that every leak has been fixed before that reaches them.
Okay, I'm going to put my cards on the table. It's not a nuclear option, it's part of the solution. So it's not going to provide all our water needs, it will provide a certain percentage of those needs. I think I'm fair to say we will never fix every single leak ever, so there are no leaks on the system. I think it would be ignorant of me and not correct of me to say that we will fix every single leak on our system. In addition to that, when I cheekily said just now I do check my water meter, the high percentage of leaks actually happen on private property. South West Water has made some commitments where they can to help fix leaks on private property, but a high percentage of leaks happen on private property. So it's down to the individuals to also have a look. Hence why water meters are actually really helpful, because you're paying for water that you're not using. So I think we've all got a part to play, but it wouldn't be right for me to say we will fix every single leak before we do something else. That will just not be the case.
Can I come back?
But we will do our best to reduce to a level that is acceptable.
It's really a question of the chief executive. Then council will be responding to the consultation that's currently out from South West Water.
We can certainly have a look at it and respond, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Davis, councillor Loftus.
Thank you very much. I'm representing Chumley, and you've kindly responded about the investment in the expansion of the sewage treatment plant there. Been an ongoing issue ever since I've been in Chumley, and there's certainly built hundreds more houses.
Yes.
The question is a general one, really. I've always been of the understanding that the combined systems that a lot of the villages have are part of the problem. The weather situation is becoming increasingly extreme, and it must be virtually impossible to stop spillages in those extreme events because you're trying to treat rainwater. So the question is decoupling of the combined systems part of a long-term strategy? And is that a cost-effective way of dealing with the situation? How does that balance?
Ideally, you don't want any rainwater going to a system that's there to treat sewage, because what you want to be doing is treating the sewage and not pumping stuff that doesn't need to be treated. So under the the drainage and wastewater management plans, that may well be that may be a solution in certain places, but it won't be the only solution in all places. But ideally, if you can separate your rainwater from your sewage, ultimately you are freeing up capacity in your network, and you're also not spending that time and energy pumping something around that doesn't need to be pumped around. So it is a solution in some locations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I represent Brownswell, but when I say that, it also includes right down to the river.
So where Brownswell is?
It's Barnstable.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Yeah, sorry, that's fine.
Top of the hill, Stickle Park, basically.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why anyway, first of all, I'd like to thank you because after a lot of work by myself and Councillor Knight and officers of the council, we've managed to arrange for rainwater, it's overflow sewage tanks to be put down the bottom by Asda.
Yeah.
Okay, which wasn't on your list there, but I know it's an expensive exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. Now, my question though is, when you say things like 1% is due to outflows.
Yeah.
How do you know it's 1% when you're not measuring the volume? You're only measuring how often the pipes are open.
Yeah, okay, so you can measure that through chemical analysis within the water body. You can measure it through ecological assessments over time, depending on whether or not it's up or downstream of a storm overflow. You make some modelling assessments as to whether or not if it happens here, it is likely to happen here. Therefore, we can assume in these instances it's going to have an impact. It's not my data, it's the Environment Agency's data that they've used as part of the Water Framework Directive.
Okay, so that's spot checking, isn't it?
Spot in terms of chemical, but biological can give you a long-term trend.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing then is that you mentioned about going down to 20 overflows per year.
20 spills per year.
Yeah.
Per overflow. Per overflow.
Is
By
that-
2025.
But is that from a huge pipe, small pipe, or is that the average? Because it makes a difference, doesn't it?
It does, and this is where I think sometimes we get hung up on the number as opposed to the impact. But with the Environment Act coming in and the discussions around monitoring upstream and downstream storm overflows, if there is no environmental impact, then it would be remiss of us as an organisation to ask the water company where customers money to put something by where there's not actually a problem.
Yeah, understand
Is that?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you're going to have to take the impact into account, I think is much more a result than saying, oh, it's this number of overflows. Because it's much more factual than isn't it, in terms of the effect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Thompson, bearing in mind the time's going on, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Yabsley and Councillor Beedham, please.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be brief. Most of what I had written down has been covered. Essentially, your presentation was fairly big of excuses and pretty light on detail. I thought you sort of mentioned as targets for the future, improved monitoring. There's the mention of desalination and the suggestion we should live like we're in the 1970s and have a shower once a week.
No, I didn't say that. I said customer behaviour.
Yeah, change. How outdated and undercapacity is the drainage and water and sewage system? What's it going to cost to update it? How long is that going to take? And how does that stack up against profits and dividends paid to shareholders?
Okay, I can't answer the question about profits and dividends against shareholders because I don't know that information at the moment. What I can say, it's not going to be a quick fix. There are some things that we just spoke about around separating surface water from sewage. That might be something that we can do in certain locations. There may be things that are a quick fix, which the environmental regulator actually likes us to do because it provides certainty, and that's provide bigger storm tanks for attenuation, so that if it does rain, we can hold the storm water in there, and when it becomes dry, we can pump it back for treatment. So those are kind of medium-term solutions. If I was to say to you, are we going to have it all done by 2030? No, we're not. If I said to you, will we resolve a third or 2/3 of the issues by 2035, 2040? Probably. The only thing that's one of the things that is the differentiator, or the thing we really think about is how will climate change impact the way that our assets operate? We know that whilst the lady ever said it's we live in a very wet place. We do. Unfortunately, the rainfall pattern is completely different now. A lot of it's very intensive, which means the systems cannot cope with that rainfall. So we need to think differently around how we can manage that. We can't separate it. And one of the things we're working with other environmental organisations is natural ways of trying to reduce the flow, natural ways of trying to treat it through reed bed technology. So in simple terms, it's not a quick fix. It won't happen tomorrow. Will it happen by 2025? No. Will we have some improvements by 2020, 2035? Yes. Will it resolve everything that everybody's got in this room issues with? The answer is no, because I don't think we'll ever stop storm overflows and reduce them to zero.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay.
Councillor Yabsley, Councillor Beedham.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and I'll be as quick as I can. And thank you for being here to answer our questions. So Robert, I've learned a lot already, and realising you're not a statutory consultee in the planning process, it's an issue, I think. I'm Witheridge. I didn't see it on the map, but I did see Brackenwood, which is further to the east. Unfortunately, we were upstream from Borough, Councillor Davis here, and we've just had 65 houses built. No upgrade requested, no money requested. Another 155 just gone through. No money requested from yourself. We're a bit dismayed that because we feel there is quite a bit of sewage getting into the Little Dart, which runs into the Tor and on it into the sea. So does will this new regime make you or change your attitudes of the company towards drawing more money from developers to try and keep the systems upgraded? And if I can ask for quickly one more, I was on a sustainable farming incentive. I'm a farmer, only a little one, but I'm a farmer, and it was a development program, and it was a water bodies development, policy development program, and I challenged DEFRA officers over collecting more water as well. We're talking about the farming, stopping water off, etc., runoff and silt, and they said, that is part of the programme, we are looking to develop more reservoirs. So I just wanted to ask you the question.
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
So I think I got this right, and I'll check my facts, but there is a requirement now for certain size developments to have sustainable urban drainage systems in place. So they seeing nods, therefore I'm hoping I'm right. I'm not planning expert. So those sustainable urban drainage systems or small reservoirs will help attenuate the flow and manage that flow, and to a certain extent treat that to a certain extent before it goes either into the environment if it's surface water, or if not, it can go into our system. So there is some sustainable urban drainage requirements now for certain size developments. Your question around, we have had an additional 65 houses, and there's plans for another 100 houses with the Ridge. Is that right?
With the Ridge, yeah.
Then again, as the gentleman said there, we will go through a calculation and we'll look at whether or not our system and our treatment works. Capacity will be exceeded. If it is exceeded, that goes into a growth program, and that growth program then happens over a period of time.
I just wondered if the new programme you're going through now will make it a bit harder, I actually think. And my question about water bodies was drinking water as well.
Yeah.
Reservoirs for drinking water.
Reservoirs for drinking water are very expensive.
I know they are.
The Environment Agency doesn't necessarily like new resources being developed. They like demand to be suppressed as far as it can be before water is taken from the environment, and I can understand that. That may be a solution at some point. I can't say if that's a solution exactly in the Water Resources Management Plan. I'll have to have a look at it, but it's one of the options that need to be considered.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beedham, I think that is the last question.
You didn't wait for the best, but there you go.
That's my.
I was friendly to make given that time. Couple of questions. So you're not a statutory constituency, but as a consultancy, you might not realise this, I'd be interested to know how many planning applications you recommended refusal of because of capacity issues as a consultancy across Northern Devon or even South West. I'm demonstrated answer that now, but I'd be interested to get
Vicky,
that.
can you make a?
Yeah, I think it'd be a good idea if you had a feedback on that.
I've got a feeling, if by not being a statutory consultee, I don't think we've got the right to refuse, but we may make
Well,
some
you can recommend-
observations.
you can
Yeah,
recommend-
so I just want to be clear, it may not be a refusal in terms of planning law, but we'll have a look at that.
And then at the start of your presentation, you talked about storm overflow caused by capacity by rainfall. And then you said, but in 5 years' time, we hope they'll rectify it. I really don't understand how you square those two sentences with thousands and thousands and thousands of houses being built. At the same time, we've got a climate emergency where we know that we'll get more severe, regular severe, weather events. So
Yeah.
I was sort of.
I should have connected that to the 3Ps. So a lot of there are a lot of instances where storm overflows operate because of what's been put down the sewer. So you put pee, poo and paper down the sewer is more likely to be able to move that from one place to another. If you put pee, poo and paper down the sanitary products and wet wipes and fat oils and greases, that will eventually at some point cause a blockage. That blockage then causes water to back up and overflow at a certain point. To resolve that, what we're doing is we're putting in what's called sewer level monitors in our network. We've already put 1,000. The plan is to put 9,000 of those across our network between now and 2025, so that we can see whether or not there's a trend in the level in the sewer, which would probably suggest that there's a blockage that's starting to occur. If those blockages occur at certain places, we will then pass that over to our campaigns team, stakeholder engagement, and say, we've had a number of blockages here. We think there's a customer behaviour conversation that we need to have because we are finding more and more of these products in the sewer system that shouldn't be there. So it's multifaceted. It's not just one thing. Apologies if I may not have explained that.
Thank you, Alan. I think that brings that to a close, but thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Of course, you could go on talking about this for quite a long time, but I think it's something that the new council could possibly look into when it's reformed after May, that whether the planning departments could work closer with yourselves, probably on a more consultative basis, rather than being a bit airy-fairy in the past. But thank you very much for coming, and thank you, Vicky, and I wish you a safe journey back to, sounds you live in Bude and Farnborough.
Well, I've got Exeter, Vicky's not.
Oh, I see. Well, you said you lived in Bude.
I come from Bude originally.
Oh, I see.
None of them ever stay there.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Sorry?
Make a note.
Yeah, and if you could feed them back to us, and then our clerk will get back. Thank you very much. Right, members, we'll crack on. That's overrun a little bit, but that's your fault, not mine. Where did we get to now? We're on to item 11 now, report by the leader of the council, which you had that in presentation, so I'll over to Councillor Ward.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I took the opportunity of reminiscing a little bit in my report, as it's the last one of the full council. You may remember when we had the Local Government Association Peer Challenge, they told us that we should celebrate our successes. So I made a list of a few of them. I think considering we had the pandemic and all the problems that we've actually managed really well in the last 4 years. We have lots of challenges in the future, of course, and I mentioned some of those. I was particularly disappointed in the levelling up situation because we really do need to have Ilfracombe getting a lot more finance from government, which is a bit disappointing. But I won't go through all of the challenges at the moment or our successes because it's there in the report. But I did want to say a big thank you to all the chair of the various committees and their deputies, plus all the lead members for all the work that they've done for this council during the last 4 years. And to echo what you said at the very beginning and what Julie Hunt said, a big thank you to all those that have stood for the council for a long time. We're actually going to miss some very senior members of the council in our new council, and their wisdom will be greatly missed. And I would like to say thank you to all those that are not standing, and also to anyone that doesn't get re-elected who is standing. We look forward, obviously, to the new council and what that will actually bring to us as a council. But it's been a really good 4 years as far as I'm concerned. As leader, I do appreciate your support during that particular time. And also, I'd just like to pay tribute to the officers as well, because I know they work extremely hard. All our staff, I think, are a real credit to North Devon. And I'd like that minuted, please, because I don't get the opportunity often to say thank you to the staff in a formal meeting like tonight. So thank you, everyone, and I'll answer any questions anyone wants to bring up. But one thing I put at the end is my concern about the link centres in Barnstaple. And of course, now we've got the 18+ homeless consultation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warden. Yeah, just to echo what you said there, but I'm sure some of us who are retiring will have an enjoyable evening by sitting in the back there and listening to the debates further on in the year. So I look forward to that, actually. Now, I'd rather come and listen to you face to face. Right. There's now item 12. There is no questions by members, none received. Item 13, report of the lead member, Councillor Pearson, please.
This is not only my last one for this session, it's actually my first, really. I've done to full council. So good evening, everybody. I want to add my thanks too. I've had an interest, it's been interesting for all of us, hasn't it, with COVID and the like. And it's been interesting for me working with the environmental enhancement team. And I thank Mark Kentel particularly for the support he's given me along the way. Anyway, I've got a few things I want to add to my written report, which I think might be of interest. As you will recall, NDC decided in July 2020 to end the contract for grounds maintenance and run it in-house. So I alluded to this in my report. I didn't really detail the benefits of this decision. Grounds maintenance have been running in-house for almost 2 years, and quite apart from the reduced costs, there have been numerous benefits. Flexibility and adaptability, for example. Instead of frequency of operations, it's been possible to concentrate on the quality and environmental impacts of the work. Priorities could change to meet the service needs. The multi-skilled workforce meant that non-routine work, which would usually have been passed to private contractors, could take place in the team. Employees who are locally based means reduced travelling times and more time engaged in the work. This also meant increasing involvement with community-based projects. They led the design and landscaping of NDC developments, for example, the Ilfracombe Water Sports Centre and the Parker Leisure Centre, saving money on labour costs. And the purchase of a chipper means fewer trips and less fuel to dispose of green waste whilst reducing NDC's carbon footprint. There work on planting schemes in Barnstaple and Ilfracombe that help the towns to look their best for the South Western Bloom competitions. And of course, the teams played an active role in the preparation and planting of new trees at the Yeo Valley Woodland extension. Excuse me. It's a bit much, really. I do want to say this because it's quite important. For the first year of in-house operation, the figures show an increased cost of 45,000. However, had NBC agreed to the extension with the contractor, that would have seen an annual increase of 120,000 per year. Win-win, would you say? And whilst I'm on the subject of the parks team, I think it appropriate to mention Mike Jones, who was instrumental in bringing the grounds maintenance operation in-house. He'll be leaving at the end of this month after 20 years with the team. His work in Ilfracombe has been exceptional. He was responsible for achieving a Greenside Award for Bigglescombe Park every one of the last 18 years and has created numerous links with community groups and projects. For example, the Bigglescombe Park User Group, the Junior Park Rangers Scheme and the Care and Conservation Carers. It was a Junior Park Ranger Scheme before I was a councillor, and I first really appreciated Mike's contribution and saw the enthusiasm he inspired with the children. He also helped the Ilfracombe Youth Council a few years ago assess the facilities and condition of Oxford Park Bay area and made sure that their recommendations were implemented. But he wasn't just in Ilfracombe that he made his mark. He's also been responsible for the delivery of play areas and open spaces around the district, always consulting with the public, particularly local schools, to ensure facilities are meeting community needs and have community input. His colleagues will certainly miss Mike, but I know they will all wish him well for a long and well-deserved retirement. I'll certainly miss him. I've also been asked to mention the clean-up operation behind the old leisure centre. It's transformed the area.
Terrific.
It's been really good. Terrific. The main teams responsible for organising this were the estates and legal teams, and a special thank you goes to Natalie Hayes from the estates and Hannah Pettifer from legal. And talking about clean-up operations, I don't know if any of you have occasion to visit the waste and recycling yard lately, but it's looking cleaner and tidier than I've ever seen it. Apparently, the new baler has reduced the backlog of recycling materials, which previously would have been prone to a little redistribution around the yard. So let's hope they keep it up. Litter is one of the big environmental plots in our landscapes, and the output of our litter working group over the last year included a plan for new waste and recycling bins in the harbour. The harbour master made. Sorry.
A drop more water there.
Thank you.
Put some in.
I had a cough and it's left me with protein. The output of our litter working group included a plan for new waste and recycling bins in the harbour. And our harbour master, George Collett-Pat, made a bid to fund their purchase, but it failed. However, she and I have revisited the plan and hope to get bins for Key Road installed in the next couple of months with a little help from the litter group allocated budget. So that's good news. And finally, I'd like to leave with you another thought, not environmental leave, just another thought. I was born in the year that Aneurin Bevan published his collection of essays, In Place of Fear. He was referring to the eradication of Beveridge's 5 giants of evil: want, disease, ignorance, squalor, and idleness. Through a Keynesian economy designed to create full employment, the founding of a free health service and education system, slum clearance, a mass council house building programme, and falling inequality. Those giants have reappeared. And I look around me and despair. Unemployment and underemployment, an education crisis, a housing crisis, a cost of living crisis, rising inequality combining to create a health crisis, including an unprecedented mental health crisis. The district council picks up so many of the pieces as and when it can. and should be commended for doing so. But it's not easy, especially in a time of economic austerity, regardless of any sweeties the Chancellor might have given us today. So we find ourselves back in a place of fear, and not just of those 5 evils. Fear of war, severe weather events, and mass migration caused by climate change, which is likely to increase, not reduce, the need for good health, education and support services. And on that note, I better hand over to our lead for climate change, Councillor Waterhouse.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lofthouse, could I just say
Yes,
one thing?
sorry, Chair.
Thank you very much, councillor, for that very nice summing up of your presentation. I've worked with you for the past 4 years, especially on trying to sort out this litter problem, etc. And the work that you've put in, thank you very much for what you've done for this council, and to get that garbage removed that has been there years and years and years outside the leisure centre. When I walked past the other day, I couldn't believe what I've seen. But thank you very much for all the work you put in. Thank you, Graham.
Well, let's reflect that as well. Thank you, Councillor Pearson, for your sterling work with regard to waste management and all the other things that you've been trying to put into place, because it makes a difference. Hopefully people will notice it and take note that they shouldn't wreck it again. Anyway, we'll go on. So as I wanted to say just a few words, because it is my last full council. So as part of environmental matters, this council has also worked on climate issues, of course, which you're very strong on as well. I'm pleased to report that over my period of chair for the Climate Action Team Working Party, cross-member party, team, we have met the main objectives of having a carbon reduction plan adopted by this council. This has been achieved despite considerable disruption and necessary diversion of council resources due to the pandemic. It's put a lot of strain on our officers. The council now has a climate change and environmental management plan, which officers are using to move forward, meeting the climate emergency declaration of net zero carbon emissions by the council for the year to 2030. The team members recognise that this target is very tough and it's likely that it will not be met fully by then, but it is hoped that it will be soon after. I'd like to thank particularly those members who have consistently attended, contributed to meetings and helped formulate the way forward. I would also like to thank officers, Markham's team for instance, for embracing the changes in working practices and philosophy, which are part of making our council play its part in saving the planet. That's the good stuff. I am, however, disappointed in today's Chancellor of the Exchequer proposals to concentrate the majority of funding towards reaching the net zero target on carbon capture rather than reducing the emissions. This panders to those industries such as oil and gas producers. I also seriously question classifying nuclear fission as sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Lopez. Well, I was told, yes, you would like to ask.
No, all I can say is that I am very close to a person who has worked for the district council and for the borough council on parks and amenities. He worked 38 years. He was contracted out to work for a private contractor for 2 years, and he was treated abominably by the contractors. We must never allow the parks and amenities go back into the hands of the contractors. The way they treat their staff, they treat them as property, as just financial gain. The district council and borough council will never treat a member of staff that way. So I think it needs to be said, we should never allow private contractors to take over our parks and amenities again.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Thank you. Right, well, I was told that we'd have to try if we could finish by 8 o'clock, so thank you to all of you. There's one or two things left on the agenda, but not very much. We've got the report of outside bodies, which I think is very straightforward. I've read quite a number of them, and thank you to those people who submitted them. And then item 15 is minutes of the committee, which I would like to take on block. Can I have a mover? Seconder? Plenty of them. All in favour? None against? Right, well, I wish you a very safe journey home. Look forward to sitting down that end of the room in June or May or June.
Might call you in next.
Thank you.